You are afraid of death. Maybe you don't think about it often. Most people work very hard not to. But it's there, underneath everything, a quiet dread you've carried your whole life. It shapes more of your behavior than you realize. It's why you cling to things. It's why you avoid risks that might actually make you alive. It's why, in some deep corner of yourself, there's a background hum of anxiety that never fully goes away. The fear of death is the great unspoken terror of human existence, and almost everyone spends their entire life running from it, distracting themselves from it, pretending it isn't there. Nearly 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor, the most powerful man in the world, sat down and did the opposite. Instead of running from death, he turned and looked directly at it. Every day, on purpose. Marcus Aurelius, in the private journal we now call the Meditations, returned again and again to the subject of death, not out of morbidness, but out of a profound understanding that a person who has made peace with death is a person who can finally live without fear. He believed that facing your mortality fully and honestly was not the path to despair. It was the path to freedom, the only path. And here is what he discovered, the great paradox at the heart of Stoic philosophy. The fear of death is what poisons life, and the acceptance of death is what sets it free. The person terrified of dying never really lives because fear makes them small, cautious, clinging, half alive. But the person who has accepted their mortality, who has looked at death and made peace with it, that person is liberated to live boldly, fully, without the constant weight of dread. Death, faced rightly, is not the enemy of life. It is the teacher that makes life precious, urgent, and free. Today, I'm going to walk you through Marcus Aurelius's philosophy of living without fear, why the fear of death rules so much of your life, why that fear is based on a misunderstanding, and how the Stoics learn to look death in the eye and lose their terror of it. This is not an easy subject, but it may be the most important one there is. Because until you make peace with death, you cannot be truly free, and the moment you do, everything changes. By the end of this, you may find that the thing you've feared your whole life has far less power over you than you ever imagined. If you're ready to stop fearing death and start living, type, "I am free" in the comments. Let's begin. Let's start with an honest look at how much the fear of death actually controls you, because most people vastly underestimate it. The fear of death doesn't only show up when you're in danger. It's woven into the fabric of ordinary life, disguised as 1,000 smaller fears. The fear of failure is underneath, a fear of a kind of death, the death of your image, your ego, your sense of who you are. The fear of loss, the fear of change, the fear of the unknown, all of them draw their power from the same root, the deep, primal terror of ending, of ceasing to be. Even your clinging to people, to possessions, to the past, to your own comfort, is largely driven by the unconscious knowledge that everything is temporary and the refusal to accept it. Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly. That is a startling thing to say to yourself, but Marcus said it to himself deliberately, and there's profound wisdom in it. Imagine you had already died, that your life was over, and then, unexpectedly, you were given the remaining years as a gift, as bonus time you never expected to have. How would you live them? You'd live them without the desperate grasping because you'd already accepted the loss. You'd live them with gratitude because every day would be a gift you weren't owed. You'd live them boldly because you'd have nothing to protect. You'd already, in a sense, lost everything and been given it back. This is the Stoic reframe: to accept death so completely that life becomes a gift rather than a possession you're terrified of losing. And a gift held loosely can be enjoyed. A possession clutched in fear can only be worried over. Now let's go to the heart of the matter, Marcus's actual argument about why death should not be feared. Because the Stoics didn't just tell people to be brave about death. They reasoned their way through it methodically, and their arguments are worth understanding because they can genuinely loosen the grip of the fear. The first argument is this: death is natural, and to fear the natural order is irrational. Marcus returns to this constantly. Everything that exists changes. Everything that is born dies. This is not a flaw in the universe or a cruel punishment. It is the fundamental nature of things, the same process that turns seasons, that grows and withers every living thing, that has been unfolding since the beginning of time. You are part of nature, not separate from it. Your birth was part of this process, and your death is too. To rage against death, Marcus would say, is to rage against the very nature of reality, as absurd as raging against the fact that autumn follows summer, or that a wave, having risen, must fall. Do not act as if you had 10,000 years to live. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. There's an urgency in that, but also a deep acceptance. Death hangs over all of us. That's simply the truth of the human condition. And rather than making Marcus anxious, this awareness made him focused. If death could come at any time, then there was no time to waste on pettiness, on cruelty, on postponement. The awareness of mortality didn't paralyze him, it clarified him. It stripped away everything trivial and left only the essential question. While I am alive, and it is in my power, am I living well? Am I being good? That's the only thing death cannot take from you retroactively, the quality of how you actually lived. The second Stoic argument is even more striking, and it comes down to us most famously from Epicurus before the Stoics adopted the reasoning. Death is nothing to us, because where death is, we are not, and where we are, death is not. Think about this carefully. The thing you fear about death, what is it exactly? If it's the experience of being dead, consider, you will not be there to experience it. Death is not a state you endure. It's the absence of all states. There is no you present to suffer it. Before you were born, there was an eternity in which you did not exist, and it did not trouble you at all. Death is simply a return to that same condition. You did not fear the eternity before your birth. Why fear the symmetrical one after? Death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back. The Stoics wanted to strip death of its imagined horror by looking at it clearly. Much of our terror of death is not really about death itself. It's about the stories we tell ourselves, the imagined scenarios, the dread of an experience we will not actually be present for. When you separate the reality from the fearful fantasy, death becomes something far quieter than the monster we make of it. It is simply the end, natural, universal, and crucially, not something we will be around to experience as a loss. The fear, in a strange way, is a fear of something that, by its very nature, we can never actually undergo. Now, I want to be careful here because this philosophy can sound cold, and Marcus was anything but cold. The Stoic acceptance of death is not indifference. It is not pretending that death doesn't matter, or that we shouldn't grieve those we lose, or that life is worthless. Quite the opposite. The whole point of making peace with death is to value life more, not less. Marcus loved life. He found deep meaning in his duty, in nature, in the brief connections between people. His acceptance of death was not a way of caring less about life. It was a way of caring about it correctly, without the distortion that fear introduces. Fear makes us cling, and clinging ruins the very thing we're clinging to. Acceptance lets us hold life with open hands, and open hands can actually feel what they hold. Let's talk about that distortion, because it's central. What exactly does the fear of death do to a life? Marcus and the Stoics understood that the fear of death is not a passive thing sitting quietly in the background. It actively deforms how we live. The person ruled by fear of death becomes cautious in the worst way, not wisely careful, but timid, shrinking from anything that involves risk, avoiding the very experiences that would make them feel alive. They cling to safety, to routine, to the known, because the unknown reminds them of the ultimate unknown. They fail to say what they mean, fail to pursue what they want, fail to love fully, because full living involves vulnerability, and vulnerability feels like exposure to loss. In trying so hard to protect their life, they never actually live it. They arrive at death having spent their whole existence avoiding it, and having, in the process, avoided life as well. Confine yourself to the present. This was one of Marcus's central practices, and it's the antidote to much of the fear. Because notice, the fear of death is always about the future. It's about a thing that hasn't happened, a loss that isn't here, an ending projected forward in time. But you don't live in the future. You live in the present always, and in the present moment you are alive. Right now, death is not here. Right now, you exist. When you confine yourself to the present, when you return your attention to the only moment that actually exists, the fear of death loses much of its grip because it has nothing to feed on. Fear lives in the imagined future. Presence lives in the real now. And you cannot be fully present and fully afraid of death at the same time, because one is here and the other is always elsewhere. Here's another dimension the Stoics understood deeply. The fear of death is often, at bottom, a problem of ego. We fear death so intensely because we take ourselves so seriously. We believe our individual existence is the center of the universe. The most important thing there is, a possession we cannot bear to lose. Marcus, though he was an emperor, constantly worked to shrink his own ego down to its true size. He reminded himself again and again of the vastness of time, the endless generations who had lived and died before him, the countless who would come after, the sheer smallness of any single human life against the backdrop of eternity. Consider how many before you have lived and died. Whole dynasties gone. Consider that you too will soon be a memory, and then not even that. This might sound bleak, but for Marcus it was strangely liberating. Because if you are one small, temporary part of an immense process, if emperors and kings and entire civilizations have risen and vanished like morning mist, then your own death loses some of its cosmic terror. You are not a uniquely tragic exception to the rule of mortality. You are a leaf on a tree that has grown and shed countless leaves before you and will grow countless more after. There is a strange comfort in that. The ego screams that your death is the end of everything. The truth is that it is one small, natural event in a process far larger than you, and there is peace to be found in accepting your place within it rather than raging against it. The dissolution of the ego's terror is not a loss. It's a relief. The unbearable weight of being the center of everything lifts, and you can finally rest as a part of something vast. Let's turn now to what this actually gives you, because Marcus didn't face death for its own sake. He faced it to gain something precious, freedom. And this is the great gift at the end of all this hard contemplation. The person who has made peace with death becomes, in a profound sense, unafraid of everything else. Think about it. Death is the ultimate fear, the fear beneath all other fears. And once you've faced the biggest one, the smaller ones lose much of their power. What can truly threaten a person who has accepted that they will die? What can they be blackmailed with, controlled by, terrified into? The fear of loss, the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the fear of the unknown. All of these draw their strength from the root fear of death. And when that root is loosened, the whole tree of fear begins to lose its grip. The person who has stopped fearing death is the freest person alive, because they've already faced down the worst thing the universe can do to them, and found that they can bear even that. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. This is the foundation of it all. You cannot control when or how you die. That is an outside event beyond your power. But you can control your relationship to it. You can control whether you spend your life in dread of it or in acceptance of it. You can control whether you let the fear shrink you or whether you face it and are freed by it. The Stoics understood that the fear of death is not really about the external event of dying. It's about the internal state of terror, and the internal state is something you have power over. You cannot stop being mortal, but you can stop being ruled by the fear of your mortality. And that is entirely within your power if you're willing to do the work of facing it. So how do you actually do this? How do you move from fearing death to living without that fear? Marcus and the Stoics had concrete practices, and I want to give them to you clearly, because contemplation alone is not enough. This has to be lived. The first practice is to contemplate death regularly, rather than avoiding it. This sounds backward. Surely thinking about death would increase the fear, but the opposite is true. Fear thrives on avoidance. The thing we refuse to look at grows monstrous in the dark. Marcus deliberately turned toward death, meditated on it, reminded himself of it daily, not to torment himself, but to defang it. The more familiar you become with your mortality, the less power it has to ambush you with terror. Bring death into the light. Think about it calmly, on purpose. Let it become a familiar companion rather than a hidden monster. The ancient Stoics kept reminders of death close precisely so they would never be shocked or ruled by it. Familiarity here breeds not contempt but peace. The second practice is to live as if each day might be your last, not frantically, but fully. Marcus reminded himself that death could come at any moment, and used this not as a source of anxiety but as a spur to live well now. If today might be your last, you would not waste it on pettiness. You would not postpone kindness or love or the things that matter. You would not spend it consumed by trivial worries. Let the awareness of death focus you on living well today, in this present day, which is the only one you're ever actually given. Don't use it to panic. Use it to prioritize. Use it to strip away everything that doesn't matter and pour yourself into what does. The third practice is to focus relentlessly on the present moment, where fear cannot follow. Since the fear of death lives in the imagined future, the antidote is to return again and again to the now. When you notice the dread of mortality creeping in, bring your attention back to the present, to this breath, this moment, this task, this person in front of you. In the present, you are alive. In the present, death is not here. The Stoics practiced this constant return to the now, and it starved the fear of the future fantasy it needs to survive. A life lived in the present is a life largely free of the fear of death, because it is anchored in the one place death never is. And the fourth practice is to shrink the ego and accept your place in the larger whole. Remember, as Marcus did, the vastness of time, the countless lives before yours, the natural cycle you're part of. When the fear of death rises up, it's often the ego insisting on its own supreme importance. Gently remind it of its true scale. You are a small, precious, temporary part of something immense and ongoing. Your death is natural, universal, and no tragedy against the backdrop of the cosmos. There is deep peace in accepting this, in laying down the exhausting burden of being the center of everything, and simply taking your place as one small note in an endless symphony. The ego's terror softens when it stops pretending to be the whole universe. Here is what Marcus Aurelius ultimately understood, and what I want you to carry out of all of this. The fear of death is not really the problem. The problem is a life shrunken and deformed by that fear. A life half-lived, cautious, clinging, spent in the shadow of a terror that we refuse to face. Marcus's radical insight was that the way out is not to defeat death. That's impossible, but to make peace with it. To turn and face the thing we've been running from our whole lives and discover that it is not the monster we imagined. That it is natural and universal, and not something we will even be present to experience as a loss. And in making that peace, to be finally, fully free to live boldly, to love completely, to take risks, to be present, to pour ourselves into this one brief, precious life without the constant weight of dread. The great irony is that the fear of death keeps us from living, while the acceptance of death is what allows us to truly live. The person running from death never arrives anywhere except a life unlived. The person who turns and faces it finds on the other side of that terror a freedom they could never have imagined. Death, accepted, becomes the greatest teacher of how to live. It says, "Your time is limited, so make it count. It is temporary, so treasure it. You will lose it, so love it fiercely while you have it." Everything precious about life, its urgency, its beauty, its preciousness, comes precisely from the fact that it ends. A life that never ended would not be precious at all. It is mortality that makes every moment matter. So the choice before you is the one Marcus faced every morning when he opened his journal and turned deliberately to look at death. You can spend your life running from it, and in running, never truly live. Or you can turn and face it, do the hard work of making peace with it, and find on the other side the freedom to live without fear. The fear has ruled you long enough. It has made you smaller than you were meant to be. And the way out is not to conquer death, but to stop being its slave, to accept it, to befriend it even, and to let that acceptance return you to a life lived fully, boldly, and free. So I'll leave you with the only question that matters. Will you keep living in the shadow of a fear you refuse to face, or will you turn, look death in the eye as Marcus did, and finally claim the freedom to live? If your answer is the second one, drop "I am free" in the comments right now. Speak it into existence. Make that promise to yourself, because you were never meant to spend your life afraid. The fear of death was only ever a misunderstanding, a monster made of shadows and imagination. Turn on the light. Look at it clearly, and discover, as Marcus Aurelius did 2,000 years ago, that the moment you stop fearing death is the moment you finally begin to live.